Hello, I'm covering David's call, 21st of, where am I? April. 21st, no, yes, 21st of April, 2024, David's call. He called in saying that Matt had already banned him, and Matt said, well, so you've circumvented the system somehow, and you're calling in even though I banned you. And he said, no, you banned me, but I'm not banned from this show, which I took it to mean that perhaps on some previous show, maybe when Matt was on the Atheist Experience, this character David was banned. And anyway, he's come back, and he's come back to say that the reason that Matt doesn't believe in God is because he doesn't know anything about science. Well, David thinks that he has a proof for the existence of God, but he clearly doesn't think that neither Eric nor Matt have the qualifications and the expertise to understand the proof. So let's just have a listen to that, some of the conversation.
Yeah.
So
well,
with that sorted, can you give us a claim for your God or your theism and back it up with some argumentation or evidence?
Yeah, I can give you the evidence, but you aren't qualified to judge the evidence. That's the problem.
Oh my fucking God.
So-
Listen to
Yeah, okay, so let's just get this straight. He's got the evidence, but he's saying that Matt and Eric are not qualified to understand the evidence. Well, if they're not qualified, that means that he must be qualified to understand the evidence. Otherwise, how could he possibly present evidence that he doesn't understand? He must understand it, and by his reasoning, if he understands it, he must be qualified to understand it. And I wonder why, by what token he is qualified. This is what I'm looking forward to finding out.
you. No, stop, David. Listen to you. You pretend that we don't want the evidence, and then when we tell you that we do, then you start down this, I'll tell it, but you're not qualified to assess it. I didn't give a shit or ask you if I was qualified. If I'm not qualified, don't spend any time talking to me. But if we ask you for evidence, don't pretend that we're not willing to listen if you're the one that's refusing to actually give it, you liar.
I'm imagining missionaries going to Africa or some uncontacted tribe and saying, these are our claims. And they say, okay, what evidence do you have? Oh, sorry, you're not qualified to evaluate that evidence. Just believe us.
Yeah.
Do you see how silly that sounds?
What qualifications do we need? What qualifications do we need, David? David, what qualifications do we need?
Well, you don't know jack shit about science. That's what you need to know.
David,
you don't know anything.
David, I do know jack shit about science, but what qualifications do I need? Answer my fucking question, David. What qualifications do I fucking need to assess the fucking evidence that you're refusing to fucking give me?
Are you a cosmologist?
No.
Okay, then you aren't qualified.
Okay, then why the fuck did you call me, dumbass?
David, are you a
wanted evidence,
cosmologist?
but you aren't qualified.
David, are you a
I don't
cosmologist?
give a shit if you think I'm qualified or not. Why did you bother to call me if you don't think I'm qualified?
Because I just wanted to demonstrate that you're not
Here's
qualified.
a question for you, David. Are only cosmologists qualified to assess the evidence that you have for God?
No. I don't.
Then what
I
difference
became a
does it
Christian just
fucking
based
make?
on
What difference does
the
it
Bible.
make if I'm not a cosmologist? That was the only question you asked me, and you said I wasn't qualified. So if it's not merely cosmologists who are qualified, why did you disqualify me when I said I wasn't a cosmologist?
Because that's my evidence. I'm talking about cosmology right now. I'm talking about the origins
David,
of the
are you a
cosmos.
cosmologist? David, are you a cosmologist?
Okay, did you hear what he said? He said he's talking about the origins of the cosmos. I expect he's going back to the Big Bang and something can't come from nothing. There must be a prime mover, etc. You don't have to be a cosmologist to understand that argument.
Fuck off.
No, you.
No, you're going to fuck off right. I'm going to have you fuck off right now. Because you disqualified me because I'm not a cosmologist. You're not a cosmologist either.
No, the truth is, with David, if he went with his something can't come from nothing, and there must be the singularity must have had a cause in order to expand, etc., etc. If he goes to a fellow Christian with that argument, I'm assuming he's a Christian, or maybe he isn't, but anyway, a theist, and the theist says, "Oh yes, right, I've got it. Yeah, something can't come from nothing. Everything must have there must be a cause. There must be a first cause because you can't have an infinite regress. Okay, got it. Yep, agreed. God exists." Now, somebody like that doesn't need to be a cosmologist to understand the argument. But somebody like Matt, who's a critical thinker and can see fallacies for what they are, all of a sudden he needs to be a cosmologist. Otherwise, his assessment of this argument is inadequate because he's not sufficiently qualified. So he's picking and choosing who needs to be qualified. If you accept the argument, you don't need to be qualified. If you reject the argument for perfectly valid reasons, you need to be a cosmologist. Okay, so that's all nonsense. I always say to people who come to me, "Stuart, you are not qualified. You're not a cosmologist. You're not a physicist. You lack the credentials. You lack the expertise to assess my argument." I then ask, "Well, are you a cosmologist? Are you a physicist?" And they say, "Well, no." I say, "Well, then how could you be qualified to assess your own argument if you're saying that I lack those very same credentials?" So you'd have to be, by that argument, a physicist or a cosmologist at the highest level to present that argument in the first place. When people come to me with scientific arguments for the existence of God, I will say to them, "Okay, my email address is available on my YouTube channel. Put it all down in a proper academic way. I have got connections in university science departments, all of them. I can get your argument assessed. First of all, I can get the science looked at, checked out, so that we know that you've understood the science and you're presenting it correctly. And then I can get the chain of logic checked out in a philosophy department. I've got those connections. I can get this all checked out. Forward me your arguments. I'll get them checked out and I'll give you some feedback." Okay? Because no, I'm not a cosmologist. I'm not a physicist. I lack the expertise to assess, that level of detail. I just can't. I can't be an expert in every single subject to assess your arguments for the existence of God. But I know somebody who can. So please send me those proofs and I'll get them assessed for you at the highest level. And that's it. Okay, let's go on with David just to see how this concludes.
And then you stupidly acknowledged that whether or not you're a cosmologist isn't the criteria for whether or not you're qualified to do it. You're an idiot, David. I don't need to talk to you.
No.
You're an idiot.
Because you told me.
No.
You told me I was not.
No. I'm muting you. You are an idiot. You just contradicted yourself. You just tried to disqualify me. But I'll also bet that I know more about cosmology than you do, despite the fact that neither of us is a cosmologist, and despite the fact that you yourself have said it's not relevant. I no longer ever need to hear from you again, David, ever. I'm going to keep sitting here and talking until you hang up.
I do like how being...
Yeah, I think the problem is a lot of these so-called scientific proofs are probably picked up on Christian websites and are there to persuade the already converted. But apart from sending me your proofs, it would be far, far better if you would submit an article to Nature magazine, for example, or American Scientific, or, at the very highest level, and get an article accepted proving the existence of God by science, because those are the people that you've really got to convince. It's not going to cut any ice if you convince me that something can't come from nothing and that therefore God exists, and I say, okay, I'm no longer an atheist, I'm a Christian, because people will just say, well, what are his credentials? Where's his expertise? Is he a cosmologist? No? Well, then it doesn't really count for anything. No, I'm not the one to convince. You've got to convince people who are at the top of science, the peer-reviewed journals, people in the universities. Get some traction there. That's where you've got to do it, not with amateurs like me. That's just silly. Okay. Thanks a lot for all your time watching my videos. Goodbye for now.